Heyo folks, it's Ham the Guinness Gamer here, bringing you my summary of the Ashes of Creation July development update. Now, what I'm going to go through here is going to be the little nuggets of information that were dropped throughout that development update. If you want to see the Cleric spells and abilities that were released, I have a separate video summarising all of those in detail, but this is just going to be the random wee bits of information that maybe have gone unnoticed that were released in that video. So without further ado, we'll get straight into it. We'll start with what was announced for the Cleric. There's a couple of bits of information then. First of all, the majority of the Cleric's abilities in my other video, the abilities that were released in the development update, were healing abilities. Bar 2, I think Condemn and Smite weren't healing, but the other 16 or so were all healing abilities. However, Stephen did confirm that there will be significant offensive spells available for Clerics. They will be a soloable class, as every class will be, or every archetype will be. And it's up to the player then what kind of abilities you actually spec into. The core role of the Cleric will be the healer, and that's why the devs are currently focusing on the core roles for every archetype, and therefore that's why it's mostly healing spells that have been fleshed out so far. But in time, classes will get added to, and secondary archetypes then will be worked on, and it's the secondary archetypes then that'll bring the greater customization to each individual character that you're creating. It's the secondary archetypes that will give themes to classes, if that's what you want. If you want a shadow themed Cleric, maybe your secondary archetype might be Rogue or something along those lines. Another thing about the Cleric that was released then was that Cleric lore isn't going to be like Dungeons and Dragons or other MMORPGs. The Cleric power isn't specifically from a divine source. It is still linked to the essence, but it's not specifically a divine source. And that's all we have heard about that so far. Another thing then that was announced then, the rest of these will all be general comments that were made in the video. Next thing is about class. The class phase will be around level 25, and that's when you'll get the secondary archetype. Right now it is level 25, but of course with everything with this game at the minute, everything's subject to iteration, so it may not finally be level 25, but it will be around there. There will be resurrection abilities as well, such as mass resurrection, etc. None of those were shown in the Cleric development update, but I'm sure the Cleric will be one of the classes that has resurrection abilities. You can be certain of that. But just as I say, there'll be single target resurrection, there'll be mass resurrection. So obviously that'll be handy when you're playing pretty shit and constantly dying. Another thing that's relevant to the Cleric, but also to all classes, is the devs are looking at dual targeting, i.e. you can have an offensive target and a defensive target. Be super handy because the Cleric, as I say, is going to have offensive spells and obviously has a boatload of healing spells, so it would be useful to be doing both of those things. Presumably if you're playing in a party, your primary role is going to be healing, depending on what you personally want to spec into, but I imagine people are playing a Cleric, they're likely to want to go healing. But if you want some offensive abilities too, then hopefully we'll have that dual targeting and you can be firing off spells at both at the one time. Movement while casting was questioned by a few people on the live stream, and this depends on the spell. Some spells will be completely immobile, so you'll not be able to move at all. Some you'll be fully mobile, and then others you will have reduced mobility, and that depends completely on the spell that you're actually casting. Presumably the ones that have you rooted to the spot, they're going to be the big ones. They're going to be the big damage ones or the big healing ones, and then maybe the slightly weaker ones will allow you a bit of mobility while casting. Skill point allocation then during leveling. The skill point allocation is going to be similar to other MMOs, but not based on experience, because of the experience debt. That would be too difficult for the devs to actually link in. Instead, the skill points are going to be tied to benchmarks you reach when leveling through a level. So you'll maybe get a couple of skill points, once you hit the quarter level mark, once you hit the half level mark, or the 3/4 level mark. Again, that is going to be iterated upon and may change, but that's the plan at the minute. You'll get the influx of skill points then at those particular points on while leveling up. Now, different weapons also are going to be able to heal and buff allies, but weapons aren't just going to be purely damage, which is sort of what we'd expect from an MMO. Talking about weapons, then armor sets, there's going to be armor sets available, different sizes of sets, 8 pieces, 4 pieces, etc. There's going to be a balance of set pieces and non-set pieces dropping in loot, but generally higher level items are more likely to be set pieces, which again is what we're used to. That makes sense. Faction-based reputations are going to be able to send NPCs down certain dialogue paths. So you're going to have the reputations for factions, and that is going to ultimately influence how NPCs react towards you, certain dialogue paths, and presumably then also certain availability of items if you're dealing with a trader of some kind, or a merchant. Now moving on to a bit of PvP. After a successful freehold siege, the open world battlegrounds that are open for looting and salvaging of materials. Devs are actively iterating on this, and again subject to change, but basically the goal is that devs don't want people to sit on the fence and see who wins a battle and then join the winning side after the battle happens. So there's probably going to be some kind of ladder for the top, say, 100 participating players, or maybe limited to all participating players, but as long as they participated, and that ladder, then only those people on that ladder are going to actually be able to take part in the open world battlegrounds that open after a successful node siege. So that's just a way of stopping people, as I say, stopping people sitting on the fence. They want people who actively engaged in the content to be the only ones that get the reward for the content, which makes complete sense. So it's going to stop those people. Then ultimately their plan is or their ultimate goal is to have player participation. So if they're lacking in player participation, they will change the way they do it. And as I say, there's a lot of iteration and testing to be done to finalize that. Another PvP related thing: if you're attacked while harvesting or crafting, you're not going to lose any resources. Resources are only used on the completion of the activity, so you can choose to step away from the activity or continue it. It's not automatic once you get attacked that it'll stop. Say you're harvesting a piece of iron or whatever and somebody attacks you, you'll have to actively pull yourself out of it to hit them back, which makes sense because it stops, as Stephen Sharp says, it stops griefing. They don't want people just to go around hitting people because they are mining a resource just to piss them off, and then once you turn and attack them, they run away. So ultimately you have to stop the activity and turn around and fight them, and then whenever that fight resolves itself, you can go back to your activity, and you haven't lost any resources, or you haven't lost any durability on the item you're using or anything like that. It's as if you never did it at all. Purchasing freehold. At the minute you have to be adventurer level 50 to actually buy purchase a freehold. That is subject to change, but that's the way it's sitting at the minute. And then freeholds as well. Pay freehold taxes. People are a wee bit concerned that you're going to lose your freehold if you're away on holidays for a week or something. The devs have no intention of making that the case. They haven't fully decided which path they're going to go down, but they may either allow you to prepay the freehold taxes, or they'll allow you to designate a storage chest to automatically pay from when it's due. So as long as you have the money in that chest when the taxes fall due, then it'll pay automatically and you don't actually have to be online. So that's, as I say, just a general summary or cover of what was covered in the July 23 Cleric development update. As I say, this video isn't particularly about the Cleric spells and abilities. I have a separate video about that if you want to see them in depth. But for now, that's all that was covered, and looking forward to the next live stream for August, which will be about nodes, which I'll have a couple of videos on as well. So thank you for watching this video. If you've liked what you've seen or liked what you've watched, you can or like what you've heard, should I say, could you give me a like and a subscribe, and any comments to make, leave it underneath. But for now, wherever you are, goodbye and good luck.